Grady Frost. Welcome to Forbidden Fruit.
Griffin Byrne, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
It's great to be here.
So this is our first episode back after a sort of summer hiatus.
Yep.
After all, school just started up. And today we're going to be talking about something a little different. We're going to be talking about the U.S. economy and some politics, which Grady here is...
I adore it.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah, he does.
Very different from Honorog.
Yeah. So when we think about the 90s and we think about the U.S., we tend to think about a period of relative peace and stability, even prosperity, right? So the Soviet Union had just collapsed. We were living in what we sort of thought then to be a unipolar world, right, where we were now the dominant world power. We had some successful, or at least we thought they were successful, military campaigns.
Like Gulf War was pretty successful.
Yeah. And the economy, at least on the outside, is doing pretty well.
We'll say.
Yeah. However, you have referred to this as sort of a lost decade for the U.S.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, a bunch of things, people, I think, especially because millennials are so prominent, especially online, people look back at the 90s as if it was all, rosy and great. But a lot of people generally forget the early turmoil, especially in the early 90s, in 91. A bunch of relatively, small by, standards, I guess, that would, compared to like the 2008 recession. But there were relatively big, financial crises that hampered our country pretty heavily. And they were a direct result of the Reaganomics that have been going on for almost like 10 years by that point. And I think they caused permanent damage. And I think that the 90s in general is just an example of lost potential. I think there were opportunities that were put up to the American people, and they did not go through with them. I think I would point to Ross Perot. I think his policies, you can look at where the people that supported Perot went. They eventually went to Trump. That whole vibe of populism, I think,
Do you think it sort of started then?
Yeah, I think it did.
Started making its way into mainstream.
Perot did well with disaffected voters. I think that was a warning sign, and I think, well, not a warning sign. It's depending how you look at it. I personally like Perot. I think his policies are very different from Trump, but they have a similar style. They appeal to the same type of people. They appeal to people that have been put out of work by things like NAFTA. NAFTA wasn't, in place back then, but I think Perot was one of the first people to, point out it wasn't going to go well. You can't have a free trade agreement with a country like Mexico when they have lower standards of living. The American companies can exploit them pretty heavily. It's just, it doesn't work. Yeah. And I think he pointed that out even back then. And then also you could talk about the missed potential of the Hillary Care, I think is what they called it. They had a health care bill. I think it basically got destroyed by, the Republican Revolution with Newt Gingrich in 94. After 94.
So we're sort of looking at the fallout of Reaganomics and the start of some serious globalization, at which point we're starting to... I don't think
the issue is the globalization. I think the issue was I think globalization is good in theory. It's just NAFTA... in my mind, NAFTA is partially responsible for the decline of the Midwest. All those factory jobs, which were already left as a direct result of NAFTA.
What is NAFTA?
NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement. It was between Canada. The Canadian one isn't nearly as bad because they have relatively, not saying that, Mexican people, they should have low standards of living. They definitely should. But in comparison to the U.S., they did. And American companies were able to exploit that as a direct result of NAFTA.
Yeah. And are we seeing something similar like that with China and all these Far East Asian countries that we have now outsourced like a huge amount of our labor to?
Well, I think it was inevitable. And I think Perot, I'll talk about Perot because I know a lot about him and I've studied him pretty extensively. He made the case that the U.S. should have shifted more towards battery production and computer production, which they really should have. And he pointed that out. People were pointing that out back then, and they didn't do anything. They just let those jobs go away, essentially.
For people a little less familiar with Perot, do you think you can give some context around who he was?
So Ross Perot was a billionaire at one point, the richest man in the world. He founded Electronic Data Systems and Perot Technology, I think. He ran for president in 92 and 96. He is essentially one of the most if not the most successful third-party candidate, other than Teddy Roosevelt, of course, in American history. His party Reform got taken over at one point by Pat Buchanan, who we could discuss in depth later, in the late 90s. And they did have a governor, Jesse Ventura, their former pro wrestler. He was governor of, I believe, Indiana. They were relatively successful. Perot got 18% in the first election, I think.
Wow. And
he did pretty well in 92. I can't remember the statistics off the top of my head. But he did generally pretty well, and he appealed to a lot of those people that I would say have been affected, and that were affected by Reaganomics, and I think those people...
So I'm seeing some kind of parallels here.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
You have this sort of large business magnate, not necessarily a ton of past experience in politics, but
I don't know.
But a lot of power,
yes.
right?
Yes, definitely.
So, and then you have the populist appeal. That's something very similar to what we saw with Trump.
Yeah, and I think it's the same, kind of vibe, except Perot's policies are extremely different from Trump's. It's like black and white. It's remarkable how different they are. Perot, generally his policies were, he basically said he was a centrist. He wasn't really. Most of his policies are pretty, they generally should be centrist policies. In most countries, I think they would be considered pretty centrist, like a national healthcare system. Making loans more accessible to inner city communities was another one of his policies. Putting in a gas tax. He had a bunch of policies like that. Those things are pretty common in other countries. And I don't think, I think he viewed himself as a centrist. I don't think he was naturally a centrist in the U.S., but, you can discuss that.
Yeah. So going back to Reaganomics.
Yes.
Right? Which was the dominant sort of economic ideology throughout most of the 80s, right? And you're saying this set up the 90s as this kind of lost decade.
Yeah, and I would also say it set up the 2000s and Trump.
I myself don't actually, I know that, Ronald Reagan was a pretty strong conservative, but Reaganomics.
What do you mean by strong conservative? I would call myself conservative.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was very against sort of like a welfare state, kind of, right?
Yes. I wouldn't necessarily say that's inherently.
Yeah, sure. I don't know that much about Reagan, so that's why I'm having you on.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what the crux of Reaganomics was, basically?
It's essentially supply-side economics. I have notes written down. I know it's annoying to bring up notes, but I have them on my phone.
Yeah.
Essentially, the policies that Reagan had were supply-side economics, which is essentially the theory that, eventually, I'm sure you've heard trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
You've heard of that term?
Yeah.
Essentially, the idea is that if you lower taxes on corporations and, rich people, the money will eventually trickle down because the corporations will have more, space to produce products, and it'll eventually help. But it didn't work out that way.
So we're not looking at a lot of real trickling, right?
No, I have the stats right here.
Let's hear them. Yeah.
So under Reagan's, by the way, keep in mind, these stats are remarkable. I looked into this right before we did this because I was curious. Reagan lowered, the income tax was 70% when he first became president. He lowered it to 28%.
Wow.
That is remarkable. And not to mention, I will go into it, his deficit spending is insane. There's other parallels you could make to Liz Truss, in the UK. But another statistic. During his presidency, the income of the 90% rose by 17%, right?
Yeah.
However, the top 10%'s income went up by 106% in the 8 years he was president.
Yes.
That is not acceptable.
Yeah.
In any instance. The national debt was $712 billion when he took over. By the end of his presidency, it was $2 billion. It was $2 trillion.
Wow.
By the time he ended.
Wow.
He essentially, he claimed to be a conservative. He's not. He is a conservative in social terms. His economic policies are not conservative. Conservative means restrained policy. It's generally, in my mind, it should be common sense policy. These are not common sense policies. He consistently borrowed to make tax cuts that did not help people. His economic policy failed. I can bring up more. The average income of the poorest Americans decreased by the poorest 20% of America, decreased under his presidency.
Actually decreased.
Yeah, from 77
That is remarkable.
to 1992.
Especially
that's due to his policies. That lines up with when his policies took over. That's remarkable. That's not normal. It's in part due to the welfare cuts he made.
So this is what is creating the image of kind of that economic prosperity in the 80s and 90s on Wall Street, and then the dot-com bubble, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it looks good.
It looks
on the surface, but when you look into it, I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You can't run an economy when the majority of people don't have any money. It's just not. That's what causes these recessions, I think, in a lot of the cases. Well, in all of them, it's because people cut back on spending. The policy he had, he didn't even raise the minimum wage. I'm pretty sure it stayed pretty stagnant while he was, I think it was $4, $4-ish bucks through his entire thing, not even including, they don't include inflation. He didn't account for inflation in any of his policies. And it's just, it looked good on the surface. I mean, prices generally seem to be going down, right? But as soon as those policies, you know, they look good when you start them out. They always boil over.
Yeah.
Essentially, I believe that. I think that's what's been seen, and to this day, Republicans are still running on this trickle-down economics thing, which they should not be running on. It doesn't. It's been proven to fail, and it hurts their base. It's why they appeal to. It's why Trump appealed to so many people. It's because the people that voted for him were, I mean, those areas like West Virginia, Michigan,
kind of the Rust
Wisconsin,
Belt.
The Rust Belt. They lost their jobs. In big part, due to Reaganomics. Yeah. Those jobs went away because of Reaganomics, and they were compounded by the issue of Bill Clinton signing NAFTA, which was, I mean, it's just compounding issues, and it's, I mean, I don't think either side have successfully addressed it either. It's interesting.
Yeah. So when we're getting into NAFTA, right, that pertains a lot to like the globalization that we see rising throughout the 90s, and it just does not stop. But when you just keep outsourcing all of these manufacturing jobs,
I don't think the outsourcing is the issue.
So why not? If you have these,
I think it is
these average working class Americans working in heavily industrial jobs, and then we see these tiny little towns just starting to dry up, whether they're built around like coal mining or textiles.
I mean, Detroit's a great example because that city was so.
So why is that? Your take is that wasn't a major contributor to the kind of fall.
Oh, it definitely was. Outsourcing jobs was an issue, but another part of the issue is that they failed to replace them, and the Democrats and the Republicans have consistently failed to invest in those states. I mean, it's upsetting. I mean, I've done tours, me and my family, and my late father. We used to always go to coal country in Pennsylvania, and he would always make an effort of talking to coal miners, and they talk about how, it's difficult because there's no other jobs. They haven't been replaced. There's no investment in these communities. I think it's in part due to Republicans, and also I think.
But somewhat paradoxically, right? Yeah. I mean, I would assume that most of these coal miners were Trump voters.
Yeah.
No?
Well, yes, for the most part.
So
because he's the only, if I'm going to put it into, I mean, I'm going a little bit off topic, but I'll put it into context. If your family has done coal mining for generations, and that's what you rely on, imagine how upsetting it is for your profession to essentially be phased out. And I understand, I'm sure there are Democrats that are, suggesting, we should replace these jobs, but that's not happening in practice. There have been programs set up like teaching former coal miners how to do code, which is fantastic. But there's not enough investment in those communities, especially in West Virginia. West Virginia is the most beautiful state in the country, and it's very upsetting what's happening there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I assume there's actually a pretty large population of these kind of small towns that are drying up with previously, major economies centered around these industrial type jobs.
Yes. I think that's most of America.
If this is the case, then obviously that's also a huge voter population.
It is.
Why are we not seeing consistent investment in these communities?
I think it's because they want people to be angry. I think that's in part of it. I think Trump, I mean, he did for coal mining. He did produced some investment. They've gotten rid of the fracking laws. It's not good. Those industries are inevitably going to run out. That's, an issue. The Democrats are more of the issue in my mind in terms of the investment in those communities because they've just failed to. They haven't invested in them. Republicans, I wouldn't say they have invested in them. They've kept them dependent on those industries, which is not the way to go. But I think that's the main issue is that both parties don't have the right solution for these people. And it's a large amount of the country that feels so disaffected. That's why Perot did so well, I think. It's because it was, that election, 92, was immediately right after the 91, economic turmoil of 91. Those people were out of work. They were looking for an alternative. That's why Trump did so well. It's because you have an outsider. It looks like someone that will bring change.
Yeah.
Right? Perot's policies would have brought change. I think his policy, he was so ahead of his time on many things, which we can discuss in depth later. But yeah, I think it's, I've lost my train of thought, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we kind of have the 80s and 90s, right, and the fallout of Reaganomics. That's you're saying, the main point where we start seeing this serious social stratification that is resulting in the sort of classes we have today. And I think along with that, you have these small industrial communities.
I think the industrial communities are directly, they're already going to be phased out eventually. It was going to happen. Because the economy was shifting already towards that stuff. You saw it in the 70s and 60s. It was already moving towards that.
And you have the North American Free Trade Agreement.
It's just a bunch of issues compounding and basically destroying these communities that played a massive role in our country. It's quite upsetting, to be honest.
Yeah. So why do you think that nothing has been done about this? And do you think this issue is just going to get worse and worse?
Yeah, I think it will get worse.
Why so?
Because I think Trump's policies at the current moment will compound the issue again. His deficit spending, which directly increases inflation.
Yes.
It's the same thing Reagan did to do tax cuts for rich people. The money isn't trickling, and so they're getting no investments. And then Democrats, I'm sure they're doing some investments. It's just not enough. People are not investing enough. That's the main thing. West Virginia is so dependent on coal mining. I think it's a lot of lobbyists as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely lobbyists because they just want to keep their businesses running as long as possible. And I think ideally, you see, I just saw Hasbro moved out of Providence.
Really?
You know how bad that's going to be for Providence?
Pretty bad.
It's going to be terrible. They're losing one of the biggest corporations that was founded there.
Wow. Where is it going to?
They're going to Boston.
No way.
Same thing. GE did the same thing. I feel like there should be more incentives to keep these corporations here. And I feel like, I don't know. I find Massachusetts poaching all the corporations. I know what we're doing. I just think it's kind of crappy, but.
Yeah. So.
And it's directly hurting those communities. There's a lot of them, especially in Rhode Island and in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Danbury.
However, when we talk about these decades, right, obviously there's this huge social stratification that begins.
Yeah.
But also, you can't ignore the 102%, even if it's for the top 10%. Does that not have serious implications for technological development and just innovation overall?
But the role of our society is to make things better for people. In theory, the idea was that it would make things better for poor people. That was the whole idea. It didn't work.
Yeah.
If they're getting more money and they still got money. People on the lower levels, middle income still,
Yeah, what's important is that
more.
They're getting left behind.
Yeah, 100%.
They're not increasing.
And it also doesn't reflect how bad it got.
Yeah.
I don't think the statistics reflect it.
So this is sort of going back to a previous episode, actually. But the kind of point you're making right now, my guest Honorog is very fond of is kind of, here we have the failure of capitalism. Here we have late stage capitalism. And I feel like that's a big mischaracterization. Because first of all, as you noted, the lower classes are getting left behind, but there's still an increase.
Yes.
Second of all, you're talking about Reaganomics specifically, and
Reaganomics
it's very important to distinguish that from capitalism. Such a broad term.
Yeah, I also don't think Reaganomics is a good example of capitalism in my mind.
Yeah.
It's essentially an oligarchy, or at least I don't know if the right term is plutocracy. He's just giving more money to the biggest corporations. Ideally, you would be giving incentives to smaller businesses. In my mind, capitalism is about competition, correct?
Yeah.
Anurag seems to think, oh, in theory, there should always be someone at the top. He seems to think capitalism, in theory, is just completely unregulated.
Yes.
I don't think that's ever been the idea. And I mean, he also, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, but he also, I'm not trying to diss you, Anurag, okay? I'm good friends with you. I just disagree with you on this. He mentioned the Nordic countries.
Yeah.
They're not socialist. They're all capitalist countries.
Yeah. You have like IKEA, for instance.
They all have kings. Every single one. It's like they're not communist, except for Finland, of course. Oh, does Finland count?
I think it does. Don't they have like the highest, like everything?
They have high happiness. You could talk to Gareth about this. I know Gareth would discuss this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but yeah.
But do you think there is I mean, the U.S. is still most definitely a very, very capitalist country. But if we're seeing this kind of disparity, do you think there's a model of capitalism that we should be looking towards?
A specific one?
Yeah, maybe one that exists in the world today, theoretical.
See, the thing is, I always find it annoying when people bring up the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah.
It's just annoying because, I mean, they haven't been involved in many conflicts over the last couple of years. They have abundant natural resources like oil. I mean, you can't really compare them to the U.S. Like, it's insane. They're like a fraction of the size of the United States. A country I could think of is maybe Canada. Maybe. I mean, there's definitely issues with the Canadian economy in terms of a lack of competitiveness and protectionism that kind of goes too far in some cases of specific industries. But I would probably move more towards a Canadian model. Maybe, I don't know. I can't think of a country that has a particularly good model of it.
So,
off the top of my head.
Is there a happy medium, do you think?
I think there is, yeah.
What we're seeing largely kind of, as Anurag might put it, inherent to the system. And if you want all this innovation, if you want these big booms and all that stuff, you're going to have to get some, the top is just like whoop, and then the bottom's like.
We were in the good years. I mean, people say, oh, New Deal programs are socialist, right? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think some of it is. Work programs definitely were. But, I don't think regulation is inherently socialist on corporations.
Yeah, that's just something that's necessary for
it
capitalism
is just
to thrive.
The idea of capitalism being unfettered or any ideology being unfettered is insane.
Yeah.
You can't, it doesn't work. I think there's many cases of that have been proven. I would probably say we'd probably look at it like a Kennedy-style, JFK-style economy, where there's a little mix of New Deal programs and some privatization. That's like the ideal thing. I mean,
Yeah. So.
Or Truman or Eisenhower. It's really those. They had the reason why they did so well in the 50s, especially, is because they had the mix of the New Deal programs, and then they had a booming economy due to the capitalist war industry.
Yeah.
That's why it went so well. Is in part because there was a combination of both. There was an economic boom, also a baby boom, of course. Again, I was just doing an economic paper on this, talking about how, the issue the Trump administration is putting forward, policies incentivizing you to have kids. The incentivization shouldn't be to have kids. The incentivization is you should be able to live with the kids. Not that because one-time payment of like $10K to have a child, that's not gonna we were looking at the stats, like $300K a year to have a kid in the U.S. $10K doesn't put it in. I'm going crazy off topic, but we can continue.
That's fine. You're a very knowledgeable person.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
You're welcome. So when we're talking about the U.S., right, we often think of it as, arguably it is the primary industrial and technological giant of the world. Maybe that's being rivaled by China.
Industrial,
now,
I wouldn't say.
Yeah. But that sort of comes at a price. First of all, you have the disparities we were talking about, but also, and arguably a major cause of that is the U.S. medical system. So, for instance, that is actually the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy in the U.S. is medical bills. Why? They're all over the place. They're, even to ride an ambulance, basically just a tax.
It's $1,000.
It's just a taxi.
Remarkable.
It's just a taxi.
And they're all privatized too, which is remarkable.
Yeah, and you have a little bit of personal experience with this.
Yeah, I do.
So, can you just talk a little bit about what you think needs to change with the system and why it is like so detrimental? When you're just stacking bill after bill on these average Americans.
So, I wouldn't say my family is in a position of an average American. I think we're definitely very privileged. So my father had cancer for, I don't know, 3 years. The medical debt, even in the state of Massachusetts, is remarkable. I mean, it really puts stress on the entire family. And I would say we're relatively high income, or we were when he was alive. And it essentially just completely put a massive strain on the family. And I think, I'm thinking of what would that do to a normal, like a person on like $60,000 a year? Yeah. What would it do to a family like that? Realistically, they don't have any safety net. They don't have anything. We should never, no country should ever. Healthcare, in my mind, I'm not a socialist, keep that in mind, I think should be a human right. And I think that you can have privatized healthcare along with some national healthcare providing. I will say, the insurance scheme, the insurance setup is so dumb. I really don't like it. I think health insurance is stupid because the hospitals will gouge you out of your money.
Yeah.
Anyway, so ideally we would have, I swear I'm a capitalist. Ideally we would nationalize or build up some healthcare system. I will say I think capitalism applies to most things, but I generally would not suggest we have it for
it makes me
healthcare. I just think healthcare should be off limits.
If you've ever seen a meme of like the UK versus the US,
UK system's terrible too.
Yeah, or
well, it's bad because they cut funding to it, but yeah.
Or European countries versus the US, there will often be some mention of the European.
I would also say the privatized healthcare system in the UK is good. They have good private healthcare. You can have both.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, their healthcare system is not going great right now because there's a lack of doctors and they cut funding to it pretty heavily. Got destroyed by COVID. The NHS got destroyed by COVID. But you can have both. People will still do, it's not like the healthcare industry. I think the healthcare industry is a big deal in Cambridge. I think that's pretty clear. You can have both, though. I don't think it's exclusive. Nothing is exclusive. You can always go in the middle. That's the way I...
Yeah, but it's if you've ever seen one of those memes, it's like the European will get a little scratch on their hand or something, and they'll go to the hospital to get it stitched up. Then the same thing happens to the American, and it's like $10,000.
Yeah,
so that's something that always stands out to people. I think about the U.S. is you just
they make fun of us.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think is.
I mean, it's just crazy. So why is it the case that in terms of healthcare, at least, we have this system where there's just these exorbitant fees for even just seeing a specialist in the hospital? It's, like you said, these people that are getting $60,000, $50,000 a year.
I think it's the doctor's fault. It's the corporations. It's quite clear.
It's the system, but why is this the case?
Well, they tried to amend it in the 90s. I talked to you a little bit briefly about this. They had Hillary. It failed because of Newt Gingrich. I think the system is set up in that way because I think that, it seems like there's, especially after Reagan, there's been such a big focus on stock.
Yes.
And incentive for, United Healthcare is like the worst corporation in the entire world in terms of ethics, I would imagine, one of the worst. And it's just incentivization of profits over healthcare.
Yeah,
which I don't think any doctor actually wants.
Why do we have this sort of system where hospitals are literally acting as corporations and benefiting from?
I think hospitals can act as corporations, but I don't think it works because there's essentially there's not much regulation on how much they can charge.
Yeah,
which I don't think is fair, and I don't think that I don't know the answers to this one, but
yeah, we're
it's not going well.
We're definitely moving in the direction of having a little more affordable healthcare now. That's been...
I don't know about that one. In Massachusetts, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, ideally, I've thought about this before. Each state should have their own healthcare system. It shouldn't be a national healthcare system. The country's too big. Yeah.
Well,
why do you think so? They have provincial healthcare systems because you can't centralize power too much. It just doesn't. It's inefficient.
Communism.
Unlike Honor Rock.
Yeah.
Honor Rock's pro that. Honor Rock loves inefficiency.
True.
We all know it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to diss them too much, but
You mentioned United Healthcare.
I did mention United Healthcare.
Obviously, that brings a sort of recent event to mind.
Yeah.
Namely, the killing of Brian Thompson.
Yes.
So.
I don't think that was acceptable.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I totally agree. But
I think
along with these sort of disparities, we've definitely been seeing increased kind of anger and animosity around just getting screwed over by these massive corporations. That was really embodied.
Yeah, it's Reagan's fault.
Yeah,
all this is Reagan's fault. Essentially, that should be the thesis of this video. Everything's Reagan's fault.
So
his economic policies basically ruined everything.
Wow, that's
yeah, or at least played a massive part in causing a lot of that.
Yeah, but do you think that obviously we're seeing a lot of increased political violence now?
Yeah,
just a couple days ago, we had Charlie Kirk. We can talk about that a little bit. Probably should.
Yeah.
It's like insanely newsworthy.
Yeah.
But do you think this increased disparity that has been just going like that since Reagan, as you pointed out, is this a contributor to all the anger that we're seeing?
100%. No, that's why Perot and Trump did so well. That's what I was trying to talk about earlier, is the reason why they do so well is because they're outsiders and they're like, oh, they rail against the establishment.
But this is on a different side, right? I mean, it's interesting because we both
That's why Bernie does so well as well. It's the same thing.
Yeah, you have
people are upset.
Sort of anti-establishment movements on both sides.
Yeah. Now. I'm not sure that's a great thing, but I think it can cause good change. Not necessarily with Trump. I think he paints himself as anti-establishment. Definitely isn't.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what just happened, which is probably one of the most insane things I've ever seen.
You watched it?
Yeah, I did. I heard about it pretty much as soon as I got home from school, and then I saw the video, like no idea what I was going to see. My friends saw it. I didn't. As soon as I read the description of what happened on CNN, I was like, eh. Yeah, but I shouldn't listen to CNN. That is one of the most horrifying things I would say I have ever seen.
In front of his kids as well, which is deeply upsetting.
I do not agree with him at all. But
I'm not trying to be controversial here. Why would you bring your kids to an event like that? I don't feel like that's appropriate. In general, I saw there were a lot of kids there. I thought it was weird. It feels like indoctrination.
Right.
It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's.
I thought Charlie Kirk was terrible, by the way. When he was alive, I thought he was a terrible human being. But I don't think he deserves that.
Yeah. I mean, I have some very strong, just disagreements with his overall beliefs. However,
South Park episode, I feel like that summarizes it pretty well.
What I do agree with, though, and what I will say I admire a little bit is the fact that he's encouraging discourse, and
he doesn't though.
It may be just
I don't agree.
Maybe just reviews. And
he doesn't. He doesn't. He only debates people that are unqualified, and he constantly ducks people that are. He debated Hassan. That's like the most qualified person he's debated, and then he debated those Cambridge kids, and he thought, oh, they're going to be qualified, and he didn't think they were going to be qualified, and then they destroyed him. That was a bad choice of words, but
I think he makes a decent point though, right? When you're talking about these are voters, and obviously he makes a career out of destroying these crazy woke liberals on TV.
Yeah, he's definitely a part of the issue of polarization.
Yeah, but I do think it's a good thing. Or I think the idea, at least,
the idea of going out and debating people is smart,
of an open space for discourse, I think that is a good thing.
He didn't do that, though. If you watch any of his videos, he essentially doesn't really answer points, and again, he's just debating unqualified college students. That's not really being open. People don't ask him, they ask him questions, and he kind of treats you like you're an idiot. Right?
Yeah.
That's not actual. I've seen people, in a lot of the tributes, they're like, oh, he was always open and kind to everyone. No, he never was. He would always yell at people. He was consistently quite rude, and he had a massive following of Republicans. So essentially, every time you'd ask a question, there'd be a massive amount of people laughing at you in the corner. It's it's not a good debate format. He did well with the I think he would have been better with one-on-one debates, and I've seen him on one-on-one debates, and he did not go.
Yeah,
it never goes well.
It's not nearly as good. I mean,
Well,
at
it's not good
at least he does them, though, right?
But he's not good in them because he's not actually good at debating. He never was.
But something that just came out actually. So they found the guy.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Robinson is his name. On the bullets were catch. Fascist catch engraved
and they put
on
Bella
the thing.
Ciao on
Yeah,
them,
Bella Ciao, which was resistance to the Italian fascist movement.
Yep.
And then apparently an anime reference.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
If you've ever seen like a video of Charlie Kirk, one of those things, a common thing that you'll hear the audience say, which Charlie Kirk will inevitably just like make a ton of fun of, is they'll call him fascist or Nazi, and I think there has indeed been huge overuse of those terms.
I agree, but I
don't
if
think
you look at some of the things he said, it's definitely, I think people look at, when people die, they look at them with rose-tinted glasses, essentially, like right before, especially with this one, which is so tragic. He was pretty awful, though, and he was pretty far right. I mean, if you look at his actual, like what he said, he was, I don't get this, he did nothing but try to debate people. He never did. He was always yelling and trying to cause hate. He's definitely he was a major part of the issue. I feel terrible for his family, though. Remarkably bad. That's such an awful thing to happen, and
but what do you think about this sort of rise of? I mean,
it's definitely an issue.
Personally, I've heard the word.
The Republicans do the same thing with communism and stuff.
Yeah, but I've heard the word like fascism and fascist and Nazi way more in recent years than I had just growing up. It seems to have been a resurgence.
I think it's also in part due to the fact that we're getting farther and farther away from World War II, and people are starting to forget kind of like why that was such a big deal. That's affected a bunch of things.
But do you think that is in large part a negative thing that we're seeing?
100% that we're using terms that I don't think Charlie Kirk is a good example because he was literally one of the major causes of that stuff.
Right.
He basically made his career on making people angry, which is unacceptable and a terrible way to live. I don't think. Again, I feel terrible for his family, but he was not. His legacy will not be that he was a good debater. It will be that he was consistently pretty rude to people. He caused division and hate, and what he did was unacceptable, I think, and that was why he died, I think. In part is, I mean, him stirring up the pot. I mean, I imagine that guy that shot him, right? That had anti-fascist stuff on that.
Yeah.
That's in part because of him. That polarization that was caused is in part because of him. Him and, I'm not trying to, make comparisons, but him and Hassan are like the worst two people on the internet I can think of.
Who is Hassan?
Hassan Piker. He's a communist Twitch streamer.
Yeah.
All they do, they don't actually want to debate people. They don't actually want to change minds. All they want to do is make money and, make people angry because it makes them more money. And we shouldn't be listening to those people.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely was kind of a rage baiter, I would say.
He also was a big proponent of the replacement theory, which was that.
Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah, that's getting into
he was anti-Semitic and pro-Israel, which is.
Was he anti-Semitic?
He was a little, yeah. It's weird.
Yeah. But why do you think these terms are being thrown around so much? Is it directly because of him, or is it?
It's because of people.
I mean, like Trump, for instance. If you saw his address at the Oval Office yesterday, he kept using the term radical leftism.
It's because it essentially, the thing is that all these people have caused so much polarization, right? And people don't, there's not really many people in the center that I can think of, realistically, in Congress.
Yeah, not in the public eye.
No, certainly. And the people that, I mean, the internet is 100% the cause of it because, it's essentially like a echo chamber. So people that are on the left and people that are on the right just go into deeper holes of their own ideology instead of looking at other people. So that's what causes it. People move towards people like Charlie Kirk and Hassan.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, though, I do think that there is some value in that kind of, like, prove me wrong style.
There is, but that's not what they did, though.
Yeah.
I don't think that's in practice
however, there have been.
You know who does it well? Cliff.
Oh, Cliff Connectley?
I think he does a good job.
He was in. I actually talked to him.
I didn't see him, but
in
I think he does a good job.
That was a lot of fun.
Definitely more open, and I think
he's good.
I'm not,
Yeah, but all I'm saying is I think that kind of thing, in large part, is good, and you will inevitably have, these angry people shouting fascist that come up to
Yeah, but that's all he would show.
Yeah.
That's not the issue.
That I think you do need to show more than that. But I have seen clips of him actually having respectful conversations with people that are
but again,
have a polar opposite.
Most people end up seeing oh, you're a fascist, and then him owning the libs. It was that kind of stuff. That's what people watch for. It's not politics, it's entertainment, which is they should never be mixed in my mind.
Yeah. Do you think going back to all this political violence that we're seeing?
Oh, I shouldn't have smiled for that. It was not on purpose.
When Trump brings up radical leftism, right, and he starts mentioning Brian Thompson and all this stuff, he doesn't mention anything about radical rightism, for instance.
Yeah,
even though we saw the Minnesota
lawmakers in Minnesota.
They
killed one and they brutally beat the other one.
But
they also attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer pretty violently.
I didn't know that. Is that?
Yep, that was a while ago.
When did that happen?
They broke into her house. I think it was during Biden. It was pretty bad.
Geez.
He got beat up pretty bad.
But we've had the internet for a while now. I mean, not nearly as long compared to
pretty sure the
some
guy
other
that shot Trump was a Republican as well.
Really?
Yeah, the first one. He was a registered Republican, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong, but
wow. Yeah,
I think that's correct.
Yeah. So we've had the internet for a decently long time at this point, but it feels like, at least, it feels like in recent years, or even in this year, is when we're really seeing that uptick of all these political-related killings or attempted assassinations.
I think it's the algorithm and also the issues that I mentioned earlier from economics. Everything's kind of compounding, and it's causing the worst, case scenario for that type of stuff. I mean, that stuff always happens when there's big economic, when there's big issues in the economy. I mean, I think of Robert F. Kennedy, the good one.
Yeah.
68, and then I think of MLK in 68. 1968 in general was just a big example. Pretty similar, I think, to 2025 at least.
Really?
2020. Yeah, I think.
How so?
Economic turmoil, law and order candidate talking about how you need justice in American cities, and with subtle racial undertones on that.
Yeah.
And the political violence, of course, and the radicalization, like the Black Panthers and what happened at the DNC in Chicago in 1968. Yeah, I think it's relatively similar. And the riots, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
there might be another year that's a better comparison, but it seems pretty similar so far, at least in my mind.
Since when has there really been, do you think, a kind of public assassination in the nature of the one that we've just seen of such a significant figure? I mean, I can't remember anything like this from my lifetime.
I think at the baseball game during Trump's administration, I don't remember if anyone died, but they did get shot pretty. There was a big shooting at the baseball game.
Right.
In the Senators Park.
I mean, is it fair to say that we haven't seen something comparable to this since, maybe Lenin?
To Lenin?
John Lennon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not the.
Oh yeah, I was like, what? Oh, he did get shot, to be fair. No, Reagan.
Right.
But he lived.
That's a good point.
By the way, all the conspiracy theories end when they always live. There's no conspiracy theories. I've noticed that.
Really?
Yeah, have you noticed that? Every time a person makes it through, except for the Trump one, but his base are they're kind of.
Yeah.
Throw that. Yeah, I would say. Is he laughing in the other room?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think. I don't know why you chose John Lennon, but I guess I would think. I'm sure there's another one I'm blanking on.
So, this is kind of a big question here, but I feel like we've been sort of edging around it the whole time. Should use that phrasing. So, what do you think needs to change about the Democratic Party in America?
I don't think I'm a Democrat.
Right.
But I can address this in my view.
But I mean, they wield significant power nonetheless.
Don't manage it well, at least when they're in opposition. They probably just, I think that they should be focusing more on local politics. They have all these really, in my mind, they have all these really good governors right now, especially Wes Moore, Andy Bashar, to an extent, Gavin Newsom. I know he's pretty unpopular, but again, he's running like essentially a country. California is essentially the size of a country.
Wouldn't it be the 6th largest country if it was independent in the world?
For economy,
that's pretty insane.
And J.B. Pritzker, they have all these quite good governors, I think. They should be focusing more on that. They should probably be campaigning more towards issues that people are actually...
So you aren't a Democrat?
I would say I'm a Democrat in most cases, but I think, I generally align with the Democrats, but I would also say I'm a conservative.
What do you mean by that? You're a Democrat, but you're also
the Republicans
conservative.
Are crazy. So, well, not all of them, but generally the party's heading towards a direction, and always has been in a direction that I don't appreciate, at least in my lifetime.
So you'd say you're kind of a centrist?
100%. Yes, I'm definitely a centrist.
Okay.
I know this sounds stupid, but Perot used the term radical centrist.
Yeah.
Which is where I would
I think you can make an argument for something as radical centrism existing, right? You're just pulling the extremes from either side.
I don't know if I'm at that, but yeah, I think that's...
You'd say you're a radical centrist.
I'd say I'm a centrist, maybe a radical centrist, or at least a moderate who leans left.
Okay, so...
At least on some issues.
So, you don't like the Dems, not really.
I think they're okay. I think the issue with the Democrats...
And you think the Republicans are crazy.
I think the Democrats don't... My issue with the Democrats is not their policy. My issue is the fact that they have basically failed to run a good campaign in like a very long time.
Right.
I don't think they've run a good campaign since... like an actually good campaign, maybe since Bill Clinton. Genuinely, they haven't run a really good campaign in a while.
What about Obama? I mean...
Obama's wasn't them. That was the internet. And grassroots support. Oh, maybe Kennedy then. Kennedy had the best campaign in American history. It's fantastic. Ran so well.
What about previous Democratic campaigns haven't been up to par?
They're just incompetent. They don't know how to spend money. They never can. Like with Joe Biden. Joe Biden should have been campaigning on his record. The issue with I'd say it's the same thing with Keir Starmer in the UK, is that you can't, I always find that people that campaign on the other side is completely awful, and then they never make an identity for themselves within the campaign. It never goes well.
That does seem to be a lot of,
and that seems what the Democrats are doing.
What Charlie Kirk was doing, for instance. I mean, that's the issue.
It's easier to campaign.
That's what political polarization causes. Yeah. You just start
it's
throwing
also
bigots
just a bad campaign tactic. It helps you get elected, but in the end, it probably doesn't work.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer didn't, he didn't really say anything. He was already going to win that election pretty clearly and pretty heavily. He should have made more of, played more into his personality. And Joe Biden should have played more into his political experience and less into Trump.
He was getting pretty old at that point.
He was. So. I can talk about Joe Biden. I really respect Joe Biden. I think he's a great person, and I really respect his family and his service to our country. And I don't think the stuff around his age is
really
as bad as
I mean, certainly this last term.
No, but he always had a stutter, and he was always kind of like that.
I mean, it was a little more than stuttering, arguably, right?
It's just how you are at that age. There's definitely an issue where,
but should we have someone as that age?
Generally, no, but I think he was still he was a pretty good president. If you look at the U.S.'s inflation levels compared to the rest of the world, we outperformed most people.
Really?
Yeah, and we also outperformed on jobs.
Wow.
The stock market was so good under him. It was remarkably, stable.
I mean, it's hard to attribute that to the actual president.
Because his deficit policies were so bad. But his infrastructure bill was great. There's tons of things he passed that I think were good.
Well, I think we're just about running out of time here.
This is a weird podcast. But, I'm sorry. I went a little... I went a little off track.
No. That was great.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
We could discuss this more another time.
Yeah, I didn't really know that much about Reaganomics myself before I heard this. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.